what I just spoke about, where the power of choice is now shifting from organizations to candidates. It is an employee-driven market now. Everyone is talking about how the talent market has become more candidate-driven and how the right candidate, on average, already has a job offer as they consider more opportunities. So do you see a similar trend in your industry? And what are the current challenges you are facing in attracting talent in your sector and specifically your organization, Marie-Louise?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for the question. And I think if we look at it from an overall perspective, first of all, to start with, I think we should question ourselves, what lies in this power of choice that the candidates are having today, because that's absolutely true. They did have the choice before as well. Sometimes we forget how it was BC, like before COVID. But it's really so that we have started for the past couple of years to offer much more choice. And I think we, as well as candidates, we really came to like that. Now, if organizations decide that, we're not in this game anymore, we're not going to offer the same choices that we have, we were forced to offer. I don't think we're doing ourselves, any favors. Candidates today, I see, are looking much more for purpose, right? So people feel like, okay, I want to work for an organization that really brings some kind of purpose to life, where I can combine my own feeling of purpose with what the organization is doing. And most companies already are feeling some kind of purpose, but not necessarily very openly talking about that. So I think this is really an area to focus on if organizations are not already doing that today. The other opportunity, of course, is flexibility and individualization. And some of us offered that before as well, but it wasn't so much high on the agenda, and it wasn't really outspoken from candidates that this is what they offer. You see today, candidates are declining roles because remote is not possible. You really have to come to the office 5 days a week, which is not matching with everybody's lifestyle anymore. So these are really great demands. And when they have come up, we have to stretch ourselves as an organization to really see how we can match that. And I think that's a good challenge for many of us as we are evolving to meet the needs of the candidates. And really, I would encourage us to use our employee value proposition as really insight. So if we start thinking around, current and future employees the same way we do as consumers, we can learn from that, the marketing and the insights organization. I think if you ask me about PepsiCo, I mean, we're lucky so far. We have a very solid name. We are more like a talent market. We are able to get a lot of people who apply for roles, so we have them open and who wants to join us. But it's also true that we also need to pull up our socks and do things in a different way, because we also want to attract candidates that come with new skills that we do not necessarily have today, right? Because the market is evolving so fast. So and I see that there is kind of a big drive from a lot of candidates to non-traditional industries. And this is a challenge, right, for global corporations when you're now competing with younger startups that have very clear purpose. That's also risky, I think, from a candidate's perspective. But nevertheless, it's really much an evolving trend. I think that we need to make sure that we meet. So any company, I think, that is really on the ball and following what's happening in the market will be greater positioned to be able to attract people nowadays.
That's a great thought. Thank you for sharing that, Marie-Louise. I think I really, really agree with the fact that there are two things that the new age employees are looking for in an employer. One is purpose and one is flexibility. And if our organizations have to evolve and transform themselves and be agile enough to adapt to these kind of demands from their employees or candidates that they're trying to attract in order to become employers of choice, they have to brand themselves as employers who are focusing on purpose, who are focusing on giving that kind of flexibility to their employees. Also, if I may ask as a follow-up question, Marie-Louise, at PepsiCo, how is this whole hybrid work environment work for you? Or are you more focused on back to office? How are you preparing for this new dilemma that organizations are facing?
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, I think this debate is taking so much space in media as well as in our minds. And I would say being humble, 70% of our staff are frontline. They do not work remote. But if we focus on the office associates that actually have the opportunity, we had flexibility already before COVID, to be very frank. But what we have done, we have a hybrid model, and we launched something called Work That Works more than a year ago, where we are centralizing. We are saying, okay, the office is not the default place of work, but what role does the office play? And we are centralizing this around 4 C's. So when you create, like brainstorming, working together on new ideas, etc., that's probably a place where you come together. Now, it doesn't need to be an office; it can be a work shared space as well. But so it's create, it's collaborate. So when you do things together, like maybe you have business reviews and so on, where you really actually want to meet monthly to go through these things, so you have a big project together. Connect is the 3rd C, and it's really about, okay, let's have a coffee together, right? Because we all miss a little bit of that stimuli that we're getting from colleagues and from being in the office, which is a different environment than maybe our bedrooms at home. And the 4th one is celebrate. So when we have town halls, when we celebrate fun stuff, launches, brands, etc., that's when we come together as well. So that's how we are seeing it, to say, when is it time to come together and be one team in one place, and for the rest of the time we can be where we think we work best.
I think that's a great example that you've shared, Marie-Louise. Again, this is where flexibility comes in place, as where, how do your people want to work? Where do they want to work from? When do they work? And creating those moments that matter for them by bringing them together, as you said, to collaborate, connect, and also celebrate these moments, which is very important, and keeping the human touch intact in a hybrid work environment. So thanks for sharing that. And now coming to another very trending topic, and I'm sure you must have spoken about it already and heard a lot about it. This is the Great Resignation, which impacted various geographies across the world, left millions of employees changing their careers or employers. And according to various reports, GCC particularly can expect this Great Resignation to hit us this year. So how do you plan to approach, or how are you gearing up for a situation like this, Marie-Louise?
So far, we haven't in GCC, we haven't seen this trend yet. It might come, as you say. So, and I think we should also think around, maybe it's not a resignation, maybe it's kind of a restate. I mean, most people have to work, to be honest, and most people want to work as well. It's just a matter of, I want to have more choice today. And if I feel that I cannot have that choice with my current employer, I'm going to go and look for something better. Right, so it's not that just that masses are resigning and deciding not to work anymore. I think that's a key fundamental to keep in mind for us. Now, even if we haven't seen this, I think we should always have scenario planning, and let's assume that we get a great restate here, or at least that we see that attrition rates are picking up. What we can do is to get prepared of that, right? And I think it's a couple of things that we can do. One thing is really thinking around, okay, so if people are going to walk away from traditional jobs and have less desire and appetite for that, how are we using technology to help us here? Now, this can be twofold, or several, actually. One is, what processes do we automate, right? Where do we use AI, machine learning, and so on, and replace human capital with those tasks that people necessarily don't want to do anymore, right? So how can technology help us there? And that's a lot of process review and a lot of challenges to go through and say that, well, that's actually possible. That's one thing. The other one is, with technology also, now we can reach a much bigger talent pool. If we are not limiting ourselves to saying that we need to recruit people only in one location that needs to come to this particular office, right? If we are using the opportunity that we have been given these past years to really actually work remote, we can also reach candidates and skills that are sitting in other markets today, that might, sit in the countryside, they don't want to live in cities, And we can by the way also increase our diversity with this as well, because maybe we can reach groups that are, you know, not doing traditional work roles, etc. So I think this is really what we need to do. And we also need to make sure as organizations that we are equipping our teams and our people with the best experience, right? So this is also how we will be able to not see a big percentage of our employees resigning, but they actually want to stay in the organization because they have a great employee experience, and they also have very good growth where they can evolve their careers. I think we all owe it to ourselves to really think long term here, not be too scared about the resignation or restate, but always do this scenario planning and assume we need to be humble and assume that, you know, there is a bigger competitor out there that will, you know, attract our people.
Yeah, I think that's a key word here, scenario planning, and always assume that there's a bigger competitor there in order to, you know, attract your people. And as you very rightly said, it's not the great resignation, but the great reset, the great reshuffle. Your people are moving from one place to the other. But the good thing that you said, and I think this is the only positive I've heard about the great resignation, is that there is an opportunity that lies within that also. And if you can, the talent pool becomes larger, as you said, you can hire from anywhere, you can hire diverse talent, and then technology can help you bring people together. So those are some great points on how organizations can actually look at turning around this challenge into an opportunity for creating a talent pool for themselves and attracting better talent, right? So thank you so much.
Yeah, and if I can add just one thing there, Yasmin, I think also if we turn it around and think around, if we stop fighting attrition, and say, okay, let's just get used to the fact that careers in one place are shorter today.
Yes.
Now, how would we approach this if we had that point of view instead, rather than, you know, being concerned about it?
Yes, exactly. And as you also said, it's also about creating career journeys. You mentioned that it's also about finding the roles, the expectations from skills have shifted. There are newer skills in the market. So a lot of that also comes in place, where how are you preparing your talent? How are you creating those career journeys for them to help retain them better and for a longer term? That's also going to be very, very important in this. Right. So another question that comes here is, Marie-Louise, how do you now see the role of upskilling and building career paths as a talent retention tool? And can you share some initiatives that your organization has particularly adopted with the view and, you know, to attract and retain the best talent in the market?
Yeah, no, definitely. And, you know, this always needs to be on. There is no doubt that, you know, we should consider and have debates around whether we should offer development opportunities or not. I don't think any organization are thinking we shouldn't. So, and we've been very lucky in PepsiCo as well, because there's a great belief. We are building a lot from internal. We haven't traditionally recruited very much externally on senior levels. People enter from more junior roles and then they grow their careers. And this has worked and served the company very well. A couple of things that we did actually during COVID, we implemented a global learning platform called Degreed, which is really I would say a virtual academy. 24 hours open, of course, access, everybody, 300,000 associates have access to this and can, at their fingertips, and can go in and train and develop themselves on whatever they wish, right? And this, many companies have this today. And I think this is, learning becomes more my own decision when I do it, how I do it, the length of the learning. So having a platform that gives you all those availabilities is more or less a given today. I think it's really necessary. What we also used, again, of course, we leverage technology. So we have a lot of the trainings that before were maybe reserved for face-to-face, hence a smaller target group, right? Because they could not be delivered very often, and it required travel. These are now scaled at a global level with a mix of internal and external facilitators, and can then reach globally, which actually adds to the feeling that, okay, I'm working for a global group, because I have participants in my program from all over the place. And the fact that we are combining external and internal facilitators, and we're also building that muscle internally, which we are also advancing skills. And that's kind of leadership skills, because many of those programs are leadership programs. So we're given an opportunity to line managers as well, to just train others in great management skills. And while I train, obviously I think, how I will use this myself. We also implemented, it's called My Development. So it's an internal, it's like a gig economy platform, and uses augmented intelligence, machine learning, to match people with projects. So again, it's kind of skill-based, right? So there might be a need to look at a project in Mexico, for example, but they might not necessarily have the skills locally there. You put it there and you get alerted, you sit in maybe Thailand, and here's this something that matches your skill. So it's project-based. And this is also a way to grow capability. So people can participate, up to a few hours a week for a few weeks. Manager don't need to approve this. And it's just giving this different flavor of learning. And you can go into any kind of project, right, to learn something that you don't learn maybe in your day-to-day role. So that's a fantastic, and this will be leveraged more and more, I'm sure.
Yeah. Great. So what I hear from you, Marie-Louise, is that technology, again, has played a very large part in democratizing learning, if I may use the term. It reaches far and wide. People from anywhere can learn at any time based on their own pace. And also they can choose what works for them, align it with their own aspirations and goals. And obviously the organizational goals as well. They both have to be aligned together. But any challenge that you've seen in the compared to the pre-COVID era to today, have you seen an uptick in learning? Have you seen people asking for in-person learning? Are they missing the human connect in learning? The blended approach as we had earlier. Anything around that you can share, if Marie-Louise?
What I would say, what I have picked up is probably that people are doing more learning, and we also scaled obviously learning in how do you manage remotely and how do you engage remotely, and how do you use the technology, right, to serve you. And I think many people are happy about that, because it's readily available. However, people do miss, and it's not only in terms of learning, it's in terms of anything, the human connect. We see now that travel started again. Several conferences and meetings are happening face to face, and people are getting energized and refreshed and quite excited about this. And then they come back and have COVID. So no, but joking aside, I don't think particularly to learning. I think one challenge can be maybe sometimes there is still a bit of a traditional mindset, that the 70-20-10 model, which we follow, that 10% of learning, we still think a little bit, classroom is more learning than me signing up to a virtually led training that I manage at my own pace. I think it's changing, to be honest, and it will change, and it has to change. But the value also of actually meeting face to face and having those discussions and networks, it's also maybe not 100% met remotely, and we can accept that. Let's just be honest about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Just a final one-line question. Do you think upskilling and learning can actually become tools to retain and attract talent in this war for talent that's going on, Marie-Louise?
Absolutely. And, any organization, we actually have a social responsibility to make sure that all our employees are employable for the future. And how can we do that? By making sure that we give them and help them develop the future ready skills.
Yes. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Marie-Louise. On that note, it was such a great conversation. So much to learn from you. And I totally agree that the future of the workplace is going to be very heavily technology-led, very heavily going to be skills-led. It's about organizations to, plan a future which is where they have relevant initiatives for the employees to upskill themselves, learn more, become better versions of themselves. It's about planning with giving them the right tools and technologies to, consider you while they are looking out for jobs, because it can be actually a great tool for retention and attracting the best talent, because the pool is large, the war for talent is ongoing, but organizations can actually use these as key differentiators and become employer brands for the future. So thank you, Mary Louise. It was a great conversation.